Good evening, everybody. We are starting out the night with, sound, and I have a different approach this week. So yes, I am here on Tuesday night. We have a fantastic show for you tonight. And you're right, the sound was not plugged in at first, but we're getting there. And we're taking a different approach to how we are looking at ketones tonight. I guess I lost a bet with my team, and now I'm eating butter. And as a result, you're going to learn a little bit about what does that do to my numbers after fasting for a couple of days. So welcome to this evening. For those of you that are just checking in, you are my sound check. So thank you for everybody telling me that it does work. I just checked my numbers right before the show and tried to sync them with the computer, which is why I was about a minute late. But I will show you the numbers right before the beginning, and skip checking it because we're going to check it again in a few minutes. I've been eating butter for about an hour, and I'll tell you why I've been doing that as soon as I show you my numbers. Because they weren't this good. We got a 1.4 and a 57. And you're going to see what they were, about an hour ago, and why I'm doing this different approach tonight. You know, we do have a great show for you tonight. I have a lot of you that have written in and told me your opinions of what we did last week. The slide deck answering your questions was fun for me. I love taking a little more time to get into the details of the science and of how I teach patients. Usually on the fly in a patient room, it's me drawing or trying to come up with some sort of way to communicate what I'm thinking. And so taking time to make slides out of it, it's one of my favorite things to do. It really does transcend what is going on in my mind and what I'm trying to teach. So I hope you enjoyed that. We have several of the questions that we didn't get to last week. So be sure to put them in the chat, because when we get a lot of them, it shows us that we should either do a little more energy towards that topic, or at least add it to the next Ask Me Anything series, because I think that did go over pretty well. Well, we have a show tonight that is going to tell you what happens when you aren't ready to be a complete fasting situation. And I would contend that many people reach for that fasting tool when their metabolism is still really broken and they don't get the benefits. I went into that a little bit last week when I said, look what happens when these people with insulin resistance went a month of fasting, 30 days of fasting, and their growth hormone hardly moved. Their norepinephrine was hardly any better. And they went through 30 days. They're never going to do that again. And they find if we wanted to study that we actually wouldn't get to study that because it was kind of cruel and unusual punishment. There's no IRB in the world that gives us permission to do that again. I'm going to do one more bite of butter. Then we're going to go to the slides. You're going to see why I'm eating butter as we study some of these slides and what you might be learning from them. So let's see. So we'll come back to a couple things I really want you to stay tuned for. So stick around and be sure to be entering your questions into the chat. I do see several of my favorites there online, so nice to see all of you. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to my favorite part. All right, so better than a water fast. That's what we're talking about tonight. Looking at what happens if you're not ready for fasting. What is it that I recommend that you should be trying to do a better job of? What are some of the steps that can do a little bit of not just improving where you're at today, but where you're headed? And of course, that begins with looking at the skills you've got in your life. And sometimes it's hard to look in the mirror and say, oh boy, I'm not ready for that. But I'll tell you, when people start doing this time restriction in their eating and even getting to the point where we say fasting, and on this channel, we don't use that fasting word until you get to 36 hours of denying that the pleasures of food, that your weakest of coping skills will haunt you when you're leaving your food behind. You know, I wish I could say I hated the taste of butter, but it actually tastes really good. I'm probably 48 hours. Was it like noon-ish today? Maybe around 11. And then it's 6 o'clock. So that's, 50 some hours of fasting. And when I do that, there are lots of things that get better and lots of things that don't get better. So when I look at the way I organize advice, part of it comes when patients show up in my clinic and I tell them, there are some perfect ways to do this world. And if you have a metabolism that has a strong metabolic rate, that your body fat index is lower, that you're not struggling with high blood pressure, you're not on chronic disease medications that many of my patients are, then you can reach for some of the best things that we recommend. But most people do not come in they come in because they're not healthy, and I'm trying to help them get there. So we don't start out at the best profile. We look at good, and then we move you to better, and then we move you to best. And the rate that you do that is often reflective of, well, how good are your coping skills? How good is your support system? Do you have a network of people that can catch you if you fall? So today we're going to talk about when you limit food, what are some of the ways when people say, Doc, I can't fast, I'm not ready for that, or they don't like some of the other options. Well, here are some places where I recommend you start. All right, let's go back over to this scene. So we're going to start with, what do I think is good? So the first good option when people are trying to limit their food is something called a beef and butter fast. That for those folks that have been following me for a long time, I have this good friend, acquaintance that over the years has done a lot of great things for teaching people how to cook and how to keto their way into a better life. And Jennifer Marie is her name, and she's the one who introduced me to the beef and butter fast. And you look at what she was doing with that, along with the other folks, when I say, when you're trying to do a beef and butter fast, it does do some limits. So for starters, we're going to write on, let's change this color. We're going to start by saying the first thing that I am trying to get patients to do when they're doing a beef and butter fast is that they are limiting their choices. That limited choice is one way for them to stop being so obsessive with thoughts. You know, when people write in and they say, I've done really well on the carnivore diet, I say, congratulations, good job. What I'm learning from them when they tell me that is that in their past, they have had a great variety of foods. And when you limit it to just a carnivore diet, that restriction, that rule that this is on the diet, this is on the menu, and that's not on the menu, that really does help them to say no to some of the things that they should be saying no to. When I'm trying to help people who have not given up carbohydrates, who I've said, yes, limit your carbohydrates to 20 total carbohydrates per day, but they're not great about tracking on an app and their support system isn't awesome, doing a beef and butter fast is an excellent way to say, no, that's not on the menu. We are limiting. There's a great book out there called The Paradox of Choice, which says the higher the number of choices in someone's life, the less well disciplined they'll be about it. The more they have decision fatigue. They cannot make the decision in a stable way over and over again when the choices are that high. You limit the choices and then you watch their coping skills advance. You watch them go from maybe adolescent behavior where they're a little impulsive, they do okay for a couple of days and then they revert back. That when their choices are limited, they are able to continue to practice saying no to the things that they should be saying no to. And they use the rule as their guider. And that's okay. That's the first step of saying, how do you live without carbs? How do you go with 20 total carbohydrates per day? And the answer is, well, it looks a lot like a beef and butter fast when people, especially when they're figuring it out. They put sauces on things that they don't appreciate had as many carbs on it. They have a few vegetables, and I put that in quotes because, you know, in theory, a couple of bites of vegetable is good, but when they've been living in a life of constant carbohydrates, the only carbohydrates they're getting now are from vegetables, and so they that's where their body says, oh, eat more of that, eat more of that. That's giving you the energy that you're used to. And unfortunately, they overeat their vegetables and can't really get the chemistry set that I'm really trying to help them to establish. So when I look at the benefits of a beef and butter fast, that limitation of choice is, let's go back over here. The limitation of choice is really important. The second thing is their body is really learning how to metabolize the fat a little better. It is fat. So they go from being, I would say, like they're getting a C+ in their metabolism, where carbs come in, they still are going to use those first. That the fat has the unfortunate destiny of getting stored more than it's getting used. So their high-fat diet, they're just not burning through the glucose fast enough. That, in addition to having a lot of stored glucose, really has resulted in, boy, doc, I'm doing your diet and I'm not losing any weight. I'm like, yeah, let's clean up those choices a little bit, which is again where beef and butter fast come. The third thing is they do really feel more full, so they start to practice satiety with the beef and butter fast. They start to say, wow, I really do feel more full. So that satiation is, again, a learned feeling because many people haven't been there for years and years. The downside to a beef and butter fast is they still tend to eat quite a bit. So when I'm looking to advance their metabolism, I will say, if they've done it a couple of times and the first few times they get the weight loss, they feel better, their metabolism definitely stepped it up. But they did it a third time and maybe their ketones didn't rise much. Maybe that energy didn't improve. Maybe they didn't lose as much weight as they were hoping. That's a good thing. It means your metabolism really it's more efficient. It will convert over to a ketogenic state. It will use the fuel more efficiently. It will not overproduce the fuel as much as it was, which is, as much as it sounds like, oh, my ketones weren't as high, people chasing ketones, what you're really telling me is, oh, you've advanced your metabolism a little. Let's go to the next step. All right, so what is that? So the good one was beef and butter fast. The second one, which is a little better, is a butter fast, which gets you to where I'm at today. I have recommended this to patients. The second thing that this is looking at is they are getting an improvement in their metabolism. Let's go over here. As I look at the most powerful thing that I'm trying to help somebody learn, like why would I have somebody eat only butter? It sounds like a heart attack in a wrapper, right? Well, again, it's not butter for the rest of your life, but it is butter to learn a skill. Butter to learn, what it feels like to, number one thing they're learning here is satiety. Is a really important, and many people just cannot remember what it feels like to have that sensation of fullness. I like to point out that there are a couple of important things in butter that really do help people get from that limitation of what their body's doing to the next metabolic state. First of all, there is the fats called ghee within butter. And there's also your saturated fats. The ghee has actually short chain fats, and the saturated fats are usually longer chain fats, long fats. So saturated fat equal long fats. Ghee equals a short fat. So when you have saturated fats, they go to your gut. The gut will absorb them. The gut will digest them. It will emulsify them in some bile. The bile then is gone into the lining of your gut. That fat will then be sorted into, do we need that energy? And if you're a highly insulin resistant patient, sometimes the fat that you're eating simply gets stored. Sometimes it gets even put in your liver as a parking spot saying, well, maybe she'll need it shortly. If, however, you look at the short chain fats, which are not 100% of ghee is short chain fats, but a high percentage of them are shorter chains. What I mean by that is there is no longer a need for the human body to digest that fat. It can absorb it, which means it goes right into a special part of that absorption process in your gut, hops over into the portal vein, and then lands in your liver. The liver then transforms those into ketones, and it does it pretty efficiently, especially if you're running low on fuel. So today, let's look at a couple of other. So satiety is number one that we're working on with butter. I'm actually looking to get you to stop eating. This is another way to get them practiced. What does it look like to do a fast? So I say for one day, your food's going to be butter. That's what it's going to be. And as much as I'll take one more bite of our butter. It's not my favorite thing. I don't like to do this. I'd like that fat in my system to be used. And usually by the end of today, it is doing better. I'll show you my numbers in a bit and we'll explain that. I've had a couple of patients where they did a butter fast. And when you look at the notes from there, the way they're the way their Dr. Boz ratio, and if you look closely in there, let's see if I can point it out in red. Dr. Boz ratio 220, Dr. Boz ratio of 500. You can see the numbers here. It's 88 blood sugar and a ketones of 0.4. The next day, she's trying really hard to fast here, and she's just really struggling to get the ketones off the floor. Can you see that? 87 over 0.3. Then she gets up to 96 over 0.2. But that day she had, that's 2.2. No, is it 2.2? Actually, it is. Oh, and this is when it started to change. So then she added some butter. And the more she did that, she was able to see that increased rise in ketones as she continued. Again, what was happening there? Why is it doing that? So if you look at her glucose, here is, again, what her body was probably doing. Right here, we have her morning cortisol. She's a black coffee drinker at this stage, and so really had her cortisol rise. Her blood sugar is running in a pretty good place, but dang, her ketones were on the floor. She's like, what do I do? And the sad part is I don't really care to chase the ketones if she felt good. But she was having some trouble. She really wanted to feel better. And she really didn't have good metabolism at the point. She couldn't do a couple of things that I would have otherwise stimulated her metabolism with. So I said, well, we can manipulate your diet a little and get these ketones higher. And then we're going to have to take on a different way to stimulate your metabolism. So yeah, this just shows that her average blood sugar was pretty good, an A1C of 4.9. I mean, as an internal medicine physician, I would like all of my patients to have a hemoglobin A1C of 4.9. That's an average blood sugar right there at 90 something. Really good, really, really good. So I think what this is, this is where she added the butter. So here she had done some water fasting, and the first section is, first section is where she was trying to do water only. And her body was pretty efficient at saying, you've done this a few times before. It would make enough glucose out of the storage to be okay. And then she would make just enough ketones. So she wasn't feeling great. She was just feeling okay. Now, had she gone into a sauna, that would have helped. If she could have activated the mitochondria in her muscles, that would have helped. But she didn't feel great. So I said, well, you can add butter. So when she added butter, she was able to see those ketones. Notice the ketones over here, definitely started to rise, that they're much higher than they used to be. And this was after 3 days she said, okay, I'm just going to do this for 3 days. So really what she was practicing there was, how do I do a better job she'd been fasting with water only. That ghee also spun right into ketones. And once again, once you make ketones, once they're found in circulation, you'll find them higher. So she was able to perpetuate yesterday's success to the next day's success. And she did. She felt great. And then that's when we started to say, well, now you need to stimulate the metabolism in a different way besides butter. So again, her skills weren't great. They were good. And we're trying to take them to good, better, best. Because she was somebody who would not do what I was asking the next step to do. So before I do that, I want to hop over to my numbers. Let's see if they're, yes, here we go. So I have my list of numbers here, and I think it was right before I started, the show. So I was at 1.4 for ketones. I don't think my glucose synchronized though. About an hour before that, I don't know if I can write on this. I think I just can highlight it. Yeah, so if you can see this highlight, I was able to check the ketones. Let's see, where did I eat the butter? Okay, so let's go to this morning. Oh yeah, here we go. You know, the ones in red, that's what was this morning. This was my ketones this morning. So there is, at least 36 hours since so it would be longer than that. So it would be about 40 hours since I last ate, was this morning at whatever kind it was, 5:30 this morning. And my ketones were 0.3. And so I was a little frustrated when my team said, well, you should do this thing we've been asking you to do for a while, which is eat butter during the day. And instead of drinking ketones during your live, show them what butter did. So I held off. I got my glucose at 3 o'clock this afternoon was 76. The ketones at 3 o'clock were 0.9. Again, not terrible, but not great. A Dr. Boz ratio there at 83. I then started, that's when I had the butter. So about an hour later, the Dr. Boz ratio was 52 with a glucose of 69 and ketones of 1.3. Now I just showed you my glucose on here, but it must not have synchronized with the app. I'm going to check mine before I go on, because I really do want you to see what do they do when I'm not having ketones. I've just had some bubble water, and I need to make sure I use the one that's not. I can't tell which of my strips I used. So let's see if it gives me an error when I put it in. I guess that'll tell me. Oh, that must be the bad one. Okay, trying again. Okay, so I've got my strips in. I'm now gonna prick my finger, and I am just looking at what else. Oof. Gotta change my poker. That's starting to hurt. So I do have a couple of those announcements that I want to make too. It's only a couple weeks till KetoCon. So if you're looking for hanging out with me, Austin, Texas. Oh yeah, look at that. Ketones are now at 1.7 and glucose is still at 69. So my glucose hasn't risen. My ketones are much higher, and it's been about an hour and 15 minutes since I had the first bite of butter. I have this really exciting invitation tomorrow morning that I get to speak at MacDill Air Force Base at 0700. This morning at my support group, I practiced that lecture with the folks who attended, and they all had some good comments about how to make it a little better. Before I move on to the last and number 3 of what I recommend, I want to show you this. I had several of you write in saying, how can we go to this one? Yeah, there. How can we support your channel? And I don't do a Refusion page, not Refusion. I don't do a Patreon page. There you go. I do offer several good resources that I think not only do you get better when you use them, but you get really good when you teach them. So if you would like to spread the news about what we recommend or how our product can help other people, sign up as an affiliate. Anybody that you send that link to for the next 90 days, as long as they weren't our customer before, you get a commission on whether they sign up for one of our courses, whether they buy a book, or whether they use a product. We think that's the best way to say, hey, help us teach other people about this way of living. Your example to them is way better than my example to them. And we want you to get we want you to get commission. We want you to do that. I do think I do that for other products. I share their products in ways that I think help you. One of those is the Keto Mojo. When you're looking at refilling your strips or buying a meter, when you click on the links here on the Dr. Boz Favorites page, if you're a new customer to that resource, we get a small commission by promoting those products. So if you're new to our channel and you're looking for ways that help you but also help us, go to the Dr. Boz page, favorites page, and click on the links here. It just gives us some bottom line that helps me keep doing what I like to do, which is to teach you, and it keeps everybody paid. All right, let's go back and finish this lecture on how I think good, better, best. So the good, when you're trying to say, what can I do before if I can't seem to be getting the numbers I want from a fast, beef and butter, it does limit your choices. It really does teach people how to get out of the carbohydrate cycle that sometimes they don't even know they're in. The second challenge I put them to, if they've already got that skill down pretty good, is to put butter only for 36 hours, for 48 hours. And what I'm hoping they learn during that is the satiety that happens when you eat only butter. The final thing that says, well, what is the best? You might have guessed it, is sardines. Again, I am not beating a dead horse here. I really do want you to learn something. Why do I keep recommending this? Why is it so important that I point out what you're going to learn from a sardine challenge? Well, number one, in a sardine challenge, you don't just get fat. You get protein plus fat. And I know people write in all the time saying, I think I'm overeating protein. I'm like, prove it. Check your numbers at the beginning of a sardine fast. And by fast, I mean you are eating sardines for 3 days, nothing else. The sardine fast, the 72 hours does not start when you stop eating. The sardine fast, the 72 hours starts with your first bite of sardines. So it has protein, plus it has small chain fats. And those are the kind that your liver will spin into ketones really efficiently. So number one, it has that. Number two, when I look at the ability to feel satiated, they get a little bit better with butter, but they get really good with sardines. So the reason that happens is that when you masticate, and I'm carefully saying that word, when you masticate, when you chew, there's a signal that goes to the first section of your gut, specifically the bile production that comes out of your liver, and if you have a gallbladder, that squeezes out of your gallbladder. And if I look at how much bile my body will produce when I swallow fat, it has to do with what I ate the last few days. So the first day of a sardine challenge, people say, oh my gosh, Doc, I burp them up. I don't like it. I burp them. I'm like, just keep going. Your body is not used to making enough bile to emulsify, which means surround that protein and fat by the gastric juices, if you would, to absorb that much fat. It just doesn't make enough because you haven't given it a chance. Okay, so on day one, I tell them eat as many cans as you want. But what happens is they get burpy. They don't feel good. Like, okay, if that's all you get to eat, I don't care if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't have an eating window for the sardine challenge, you will figure this out. But step one is when you eat, you can't give up after day one. Let's go back over here. So we look at bile production. that bile production with a can of sardines, it is much better by day 3. The other things that are better by day 3 are the hormones that are important for satiety. That's cholecystokinin, peptide YY, and then leptin is better. It's also an insulin resistance thing, so that's a little harder to explain. But the third thing that happens when people do a sardine fat challenge is they don't realize it, but or maybe they do. There's portion control. It is really hard. It is really hard to overeat sardines. They will eat a can, and then they take a break. There is portion control that is happening. Portion. Let's try again. I wasn't thinking portion control. And that is a big deal. That when people are doing the beef and butter fast, we don't talk about portions. We just say eat till you're full, eat till you're full. And I have seen some people pack away an incredible amount of food on the beef and butter fast. You say, but doc, I said you could eat all that. I'm like, yes, it's a skill that you're learning. By the time you get to the sardine challenge, again, the best version of what I ask people to do before they fast, they're practicing. What does it look to have an appropriate amount of food? And then stop and watch what your body does. Listen to what your body's saying to you. And when people have used food for a coping skill, they don't want to stop. They want to just keep eating. It feels good when I eat. This is when I feel better. If I eat a little more, it's going to feel better. And that lack of control, that lack of balanced, maybe mature coping skills, as opposed to an adolescent coping skill that is very much about chasing the carbs, feeling better, just another bite, one more bite, which is where I see vegetables get off too far on a ketogenic diet. It's also what gets curbed a little bit on a beef and butter fast, better on a butter-only fast, but really good by day 3 of a sardine challenge. And here's some numbers. Okay, so here's what one of the patients did in their sardine challenge. This is the section where they're eating normal meals, or their 2 meals a day before the sardine challenge. You'll notice that when they're eating, their ketones go down, and when they go to bed at night, they get a little bit of ketones, but again, maybe it hit 1, and that's pretty good. By the time they wake up and check their numbers, their ketones are pretty low, and their glucose is not good. So the first day, this is the first can of sardines. This is the second can of sardines. And you'll notice that, okay, those ketones are not as low as they were before. Their body's making more. And part of that is what happens to those short chain fats in the liver when they eat the can. The second day, you'll notice, there's their little cortisol, not quite as high as it was the day before. And this amount of sugar is not as high as it was on the first one. So you see their blood sugars are starting to improve. They also usually eat within a 4-hour window. Their eating window is smaller. It's not always the case, but I find commonly, if it's their second sardine challenge or their third sardine challenge, that they're learning what does it look like to not eat so much, which is a part of the skill we are trying to help you with. It's not important at the beginning, but it does become important as you advance along a ketogenic metabolism. By the third one, here's that first can of sardines on the third one. Again, the 72nd hour is the last can of sardines. And what I love pointing out is look what on that 4th day, after they're done eating the sardine challenge, they're back to eating what they normally did, and their ketones are way higher than they used to be. And so this surge in ketones, not only was it their liver spinning those short chain fats found in those cans of sardines into ketones, but as you make ketones, ketones beget ketones. And so now their metabolism is advanced. They feel better. What happens when you have high ketones? It suppresses appetite. It gives you energy. Your brain works better. All of the chemistry set that when people show up in their 30s and they have a good metabolism and they do a 3-day, spiritual fast and they come out with this kind of enlightenment. Yeah, that's great for somebody who's never had insulin resistance, but that does not happen to the rest of us when you've had high insulin for 20 years. So I do point out the eating window at the beginning of that sardine fast was a little, let's see if I can take all these out of here, was a little more than most people appreciated, or the eating window was usually around that 6 hours, 8 to 8 hours at the beginning. That glucose and what it does throughout the time, again, peaked a lot on the first day of sardines, not as high as it did when they were eating the regular menu. Second can of sardines, not as much. Third can of, this is the essentially third can, but the second day, not as high. And then it was even lower after that. It's really when you see that metabolic shift where you see their mitochondria totally took over and said, well, here's what happens when your ketones are mostly fueled by, or your mitochondria is mostly fueled by ketones. All right, so final. Here is something that I have yet to show, and that is the data from the last 21-day challenge. So again, we had all these folks show up in the 21-day challenge, and some of them had never done a elimination diet, essentially, which is 3 days of sardines. And we said, yep, by the time we get you to the sardine challenge, everybody can do it. And we had them all hooked up to monitors where we could see what their morning glucose was and their morning ketones. And we said, be sure to check at least every morning. If you want to check again later on the day, that's fine, but at least show me your numbers first thing in the morning. So when we look at the data, the 19 days, here's what their blood sugars did. They started out with an average, and again, this is over 100 people, an average blood sugars that were around 100. But guess what started right here? Yeah, the sardine challenge. That's the first 3 days of eating only sardines. And on average, they dropped their blood sugars down into the 80s. Again, this is not one patient. This is over 130 patients or something. As they started out with ketones that were, again, pretty dismal, down there in the, 0.9 range. And then you start to see what happens. On the first day of the sardine challenge, yes, it's a little bit better. We've got a few behaviors that, well, just by being in a group and having everybody else watch what you're doing, there's some better ketones because there's some metabolisms that are being stressed. By the end of the sardine challenge, wow, we had ketones in the average range of 100 people. We are averaging at 2.7. That is really cool. That was really cool. But you're also getting, the drop in the blood sugars. So I'll explain what the rest of these numbers mean in just a second, because here is what the Dr. Boz ratios did. Again, the Dr. Boz ratio at the beginning was 237. By the time they got done with their sardine, the sardine challenge, the average Dr. Boz ratio was 38 for 100 people. And that's not even looking at what happened when we started here, which is where we did a water fast. Now, not everybody could do 72 hours of water fast, but look at how much we were able to stimulate their metabolism as we pushed their skill set to see, well, what happens if we deny you food for 3 days? Will your metabolism respond? Will you rise? Will your mitochondria rise to the challenge? So you say, well, what was really happening with this? And I get this question a lot. I know it's at the end of the video, but I hope you stick around to hear this, because when people say, well, why? Why is it working? What is so good about that, having a bunch of sardines at once? And it's because the patients who it is working for the most, well, they have fat. Okay, I have fat, but their fat is locked. Why is it locked? Because they've had high insulin for a long time. And even when they start to say, well, I didn't eat for 3 days, shouldn't my insulin be less? Yes, it should be. But there is still a bunch of years that you stored sugar, that we are giving sugar to the system. And we have to lower the sugar pretty dramatically or add ketones to get that insulin to settle down a little bit further. So when you add in those short chain fats and the sardines are filled with them, that insulin, they got rid of its flames, And now this is normal insulin. And that starts to unlock the fat cells, which then can turn into the circulation, going back into where it needs to go in the form of ketones, in the form of fatty chains, and then to the liver, and the liver will spin them into ketones. And that is an answer that really does unlock how they can lose weight. Once we shift that chemistry, now it's easier to do the next time. I like using this as a teachable thing. If we take a setting with high insulin in it, and we start out with a pretty good looking liver, right? The first thing that happened 30 years ago was you kept eating too many carbs, you kept eating too many carbs, you kept eating too many carbs. And your liver said, yeah, glucose, we can store glucose. We got glucose. So the glucose goes, those are all your little blood sugars, and they go into the liver, and the liver says, yeah, it's okay, I can deal with this, I can deal with this. And it spins out energy. It sends it to the muscles and does the same thing. But after a while, it starts to say, we need a better storing system. So it takes those glucose and turns them into glycogen. Now, those glycogen, they fit better in your liver. And they're strings of sugar that you can easily unwind. It's the difference between swallowing ketones or swallowing short or medium chain fats versus swallowing glucose. Glucose, if you can't use the glucose at the time you swallow it, you'll store it. If there's too many of these, too many glucose, it'll store them as glycogen. Once the glycogen says, well, we're kind of full, let's get even more efficient. Well, then it starts to weave those glucoses into fat. They're called triglycerides. And then the triglycerides fill up in your system, and the liver says, well, by golly, we got to find a better storing system again. So then it spins them into even longer chain fats. And then before you know it, you don't have a pretty, beautiful liver. You have a gnarly one that looks like a cirrhotic liver. It looks like you've been drinking booze for too long. And it's because you got a bunch of fat in there, you got a bunch of glucose in there, you got a bunch of stored glucose called glycogen in there, and you got a bunch of triglycerides in there. And so when you change the insulin from the high insulin to a little less than yesterday, which is what the beef and butter fast does at first, and then your body gets healthier. It takes a bigger stress to lower the insulin. And that's where butter did a little better job. It had ghee on its side, and you were learning, what does satiety feel like? You have to stop eating so much. But when you really want to practice pushing ketones out your circulation, that is the best answer is to eat sardines only for 3 days. And your insulin truly starts to say, okay, it's less than it was yesterday. It's still insulin resistant. You still got a long ways to go, but it starts to unwind the stored glucose, unwind the stored fat, unwind the chronic nature of what is typically found inside a liver. And eventually, when you get there long enough, it turns that liver back into a healthy looking liver. Not a short-term problem, it's a long-term problem. This is just another way to show, yep, here is how that liver looks at first, and then we turn it into a much different, much better, I would say, version of your body, but also a decreased. It takes more. It takes more stress to get you to mobilize some of that energy, which is why my ketones this morning were 0.3. So what really happened? Well, the sauna that I did on Sunday was totally wimpy. I went in, I was there for like 15 minutes. And was it the good sauna where it gets hot? Nah, it was kind of warm. That's it. And then yesterday my workout was okay. I did okay, but it wasn't great. So again, those are the kind of stresses that I've had to add to my fasting in order for my metabolism to really step up to the next level. And when I slack off and I'm a little bit lazy or just not as disciplined as I was, well, then my ketones are terrible on Tuesday morning. So if you eat butter, let's see what they are at the end of the show. We'll get over to your questions here in just a second. I do want to say that I'm putting the strips in now so to make sure I don't forget to check them before I sign off, because I did that last week too. I forgot to sign off. And I did make it to parent-teacher conferences, but I forgot to show you. So I put it on the little community post that you can put in YouTube, which I don't put too many of those out. But so we'll check this at the end. Let's get to your questions and see if I have. Oh, here we go. Coach Sandra, one of my favorites. She writes in and said, speaking of ketones, is it true that adding exogenous ketones raises the level above 3.5, shuts down your endogenous production? No, that is not true. Okay, first of all, the production of, again, it's a great question. I get this a lot, so I bet as a coach you get this a lot too. When I add those ketones on Tuesdays, okay, do it on a week where I'm doing a little better, and I take my ketones from 1.5 to 3. Okay, first of all, they're only at 3 for a hot minute because, my mitochondria knows how to use ketones. I've been doing this for several years, folks. So I've had ketones in, I feel better, my brain's a little sharper, my appetite's suppressed, and I use them. So as soon as I do use them, obviously they're not in my circulation anymore, but if they're lower, over the course of the next hour, it's lower because they either got burned or they were so high, 3.5, that I peed them out. So to me, it's a waste of the supplement when you're trying to take them from 1 to 5. If you're dealing with cancer and I'm trying to help you deal with a bunch of prednisone that you're having to take for your chemo regimen, well, then drink the ketones. You want to compete to try and get as many ketones in front of that glucose as possible. You want to keep that inflammatory state as low as possible. But when you add ketones to somebody's circulation, exogenous ketones, that signals the liver, keep making them. Turn those triglycerides into ketones. Turn that fat that's in their liver into ketones. That signaling agent is a powerful message for how many ketones you're going to make over the next day or so. So by supplementing ketones, it isn't just... So you can't take a body who's never made ketones, not never, but you're rarely made ketones. You add a supplement, you're going to have ketones for about an hour. But it's not going to be enough if you're eating your way through, if you're not doing any of this other stuff. If you're not following the steps along the keto continuum, if you're not trying to, work on, can I get to the next level? That supplement's going to help you 1/10 as much as what it would help if you're saying, no, I'm trying to eat within this window. I stopped eating a few hours ago. I'm feeling pretty gnarly and crabby. I wonder if I'd feel better with some ketones. The answer is yes. Adding ketones at that point while you continue to work on whatever habit that you're trying to undo, that is a good plan. And it does not suppress your ability, to make them. It actually stimulates the liver to produce them, especially if you're in the upswing journey of making ketones. All right, Lisa writes in and says, if my blood sugar is staying high, is it okay to raise my ketones? Again, very good question. So if my blood sugar is staying high, like 175, is it okay to raise my ketones? In my experience, this is my typical diabetic, chronically carb eating or carb fueled patient who is trying to figure it out, trying to get to the other side that says, hey, I want to teach my body how to use ketones. Adding exogenous ketones allows you to circulate those ketones, but their half-life is short, a couple hours. If you're looking for a way that your ketones stay in circulation, swallow the medium chain triglyceride oil. So the ghee that I was talking about in butter, it's not all short chain fatty acids, and you don't get a lot of ketones from that fat. So you put in a ton of calories. Some people get diarrhea, and they aren't able to produce a very large amount of ketones. When you put in medium chain fats, again, those are all absorbed. They are not digested. They go into the liver. And in most settings, they spin into ketones. So what I would do, Lisa, is I would test out where your metabolism is at. So morning fasting ketones, morning fasting glucose. And then swallow about 6, you can start with 1, make sure you don't get diarrhea, and then get up to about 6 of those soft gels, medium chain triglycerides. The reason I put them in capsules instead of in a can is that fat does not stay, it can easily go rancid when it's exposed to air. So when you buy the soft gels, it lasts longer. It doesn't go rancid. Anyway, so you put 6 of those in and then check your ketones in 30 minutes. Check your ketones in an hour. Check your ketones in 90 minutes after you take those 6 soft gels. If you don't see a rise in your ketones, well, you might want to do the experiment one more time and take 8 of them, meaning did you get enough? Were you able to absorb them? When people are first getting exposed to medium chain fats, they do not often have the ability to absorb the fat. I mean, like the cells that are in charge of emulsifying the fat and putting it into the circulation, they're sleepy. They haven't been stimulated in so long. So it can take a few days to say, let me show you what I'm talking about here. So I have them start with one of these. And the reason I'm saying use medium chain fats is, well, they last for 4 to 8 hours instead of the 2 hours. So you put the fats in, and now your liver will be pushing out ketones for 8 to 10 hours. So in somebody who's stuck, they're insulin resistant, they're my diabetic, they have blood sugars in the 170s, exogenous ketones are not going to, they'll help you for a short period of time, but you need a longer coverage for ketones to try and shift this chemistry into the right direction. And most importantly, you should be measuring. Like, if you cannot produce ketones, well, get yourself to a support group, get into the keto continuum, get into a support group, finding that tribe to say, how good are you being really? Because we are happy to hear on the Dr. Boz show to say we want everybody to have a support group that is connected with their numbers, because that's where the truth telling, it's like a truth serum. If you're not checking your numbers, why aren't you checking your numbers? What happened? Why did you drop off the face of the earth? Oh, you fell off the wagon? Yeah, we've been there too. Or they're checking the numbers and not going well. Okay, you need to step it up. You need to go to the next level of the keto continuum. Just like when my numbers aren't doing well, I don't always want to do that, but that's how you do it. Or they would always be 0.3 on Tuesday morning, especially if I did what I did this weekend, which is just not really assertive in how I was taking care of me. All right, do a couple more questions. There's some good ones over here. Okay. Can anything else specifically reduce inflammation other than a keto lifestyle? Example, eat mostly seafood and olive oil. Yeah, when you eat mostly seafood and olive oil, what are you doing? If you check your ketones, you're going to be in a state of ketosis. That's what's going to happen. It's that when people try to get the outcome of an anti-inflammatory setting, but they don't check their chemistry, you're just kidding yourself. When they say, oh, eat a plant-based diet. Their plant-based diet turns into, if they're a high insulin state, it doesn't work. There's enough carbohydrates in that plant-based diet. And usually that plant-based diet has enough processed foods that they stimulate the heck out of their insulin. They don't lose weight, and their brain does not feel good. When they say, well, this time I'm going to eat only seafood. Okay, all right. If you do that, check your chemistry. If you've got high blood sugars and no ketones, well, that shift has to happen. Insulin will cause this inflammatory state. And when you've been producing buckets of it, and now you're saying, well, doc, that's going to lead to, all these diseases of aging. How do I reverse it? I'm like, cut out the carbs, do beef and butter, then do butter only, then do sardines, then step it up and do a fast. And that doesn't happen in 4 days. That takes like 3 or 4 months to at least to get to that level. And a lot of times people lose focus. They lose motivation. They need encouragement. So that's why a support group is super important for this. And if your support group is not connected by numbers, then you're kidding yourself. You do not need to pay for this. Keto Mojo, that's why I'm saying support our channel. We're supporting Keto Mojo. We want you to have this for free. It is one of the key tickets that we say, guess which groups are doing the best after the 21-day class. Oh yeah, the ones who connected with numbers, because it does tell the truth. It does show you, guess what? You can do this. You don't need me. You just need a tribe. You need a tribe that's educated, and then somebody who can answer your questions, and then we hope to keep doing that. So again, we are looking for you guys to see we are not eternally supported here. Anything you can do to help our channel, like share the videos or become our affiliate, that would be great. Then you get some money and we get to keep going. And I get to keep coming here on Tuesday nights and teaching you what I like to teach you. All right, my last set of numbers for the night. Ketones, 1.5, glucose down to 67. So that is 90 minutes after my first bite of butter. So it is my goal to fast through my talk tomorrow at MacDill Air Force Base. So if you're out there and you're going to be at the Air Force Base at 0700, I will see you with a great lecture talking about brains and how is a concussion like glucose. All right, see you guys. And if you are looking to ask me questions one-on-one, I will be at KetoCon and in Austin, Texas, April. I said August last week too. April 20th, 21st, and 22nd, I think. See you next week, everybody.